This is ogforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Saturday, January 27th, 2024, and this is episode number 122. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 122. Today I arrived at Acumatica Summit 2024 at the Wynn in Las Vegas, and even though the summit hasn't started yet, the hackathon did start this afternoon. I arrived after dinner around 8:30 p.m., and the first thing I noticed was that the room seemed more empty than last year, and not just more empty, but it just wasn't as much energy as last year. So I don't know, could have just been just when I happened to walk in, I'm not sure, but I also did not catch all of the teams because apparently some of them had already left by 8:30. So you'll hear that some of the teams are missing in my interviews. But yeah, there was just something missing, and I think a big part of it was that Mark Franks, who really started the hackathon, his last hackathon was last year, but he's no longer at Acumatica, so I think that's probably a big reason why it just didn't feel the same to me. It was like a lack of buzz, a lack of energy. Last year it was much, I don't know, just seemed much more energetic, and people were there until a lot later. There was a lot of chatter going on, and Mark was kind of in the middle of all the chaos, working on some blog posts, and someone even asked if he could put a basketball game up on the screen, so he did. So he had that going on, and I don't know, it just seemed more fun. But and that was even me as an outside observer last year, just like I was again this year. But just my kind of high level take on things. And even another difference that seems like a small thing, but to me, like, I don't know why it had to be changed. Instead of using the Greek letters that Mark had always done at the hackathon, they were just numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 each team. But anyways, one thing that was better this year is I brought a better mic to do the interviews. Last year, I was just using my phone and a mic I had bought on Amazon, and it just didn't do the job. It was cutting in and out. So this year I used my computer and my Blue Yeti mic, which is much better. Although I think I was talking, I got too excited. I was talking too loud. So you'll hear I'm kind of maxing out the mic volume there. Feel free to just forward through the parts when I'm talking and just listen to the teams talk and describe their solutions. I think it's nice to interview the teams on Saturday at the hackathon. What I learned last year is it kind of helps each team give a dry run of their presentation a little bit, because they're in the weeds of the details of how to code something, and it's hard to switch gears and think presentation, and just kind of popping in and having someone describe it to you. I think it helps warm up their presentation a little bit and think about things from the side of someone who has no idea what they're working on. So hopefully, in some small way, that was a little bit of help to the teams. Although on the other hand, I am interrupting them, and so of course that's not very helpful. But I did appreciate every team was willing. At least one person was willing to jump in and be the sacrificial lamb to try to describe their solution. And some of them I got right away. Others, it took me a little bit to understand what was going on. And that's just the nature of any solution, right? Sometimes it clicks for you, sometimes it doesn't. So you'll hear some of the interviews run longer than others. But super glad that all the teams are willing to, at least all the ones that were there around 8:30 to 10 or so when I did these interviews. I appreciate them all for participating and giving everyone a glimpse into what people were working on at Hackathon 2024. The overall, goal for all the teams was to have a solution that aims at sustainable development goals, specifically 4 goals from the UN, I believe it was. I'll put a link on this episode page to the official Acumatica blog post talking about that. So you'll hear that's the theme for this year. And see, I'm trying to remember if there's anything else. I'm recording this from my hotel room before I head to bed, but a good start to Summit for me at least. I always get energized listening to what people are working on at the hackathon. I just, I don't know, definitely missing Mark Franks this year. Hopefully the energy can get recovered next year somehow, or maybe I was just reading things wrong. But anyways, missing Mark. So otherwise, saw a lot of familiar faces, and always cool to hear what people come up with. Always lots of creative ideas. And of course, the presentations will be tomorrow. But for those of you who maybe aren't at Summit or can't see those presentations, this podcast episode hopefully is a little small way for you to hear about what people are working on and get some ideas for, you'll even hear some of them, even though the focus is sustainability, some of the solutions have some kind of like hidden features that would solve non-sustainable issues. Some of the, like bin capacity is one I'm thinking of, or taking pictures easily on a mobile device, things that I think could be applied to a lot of Acumatica implementations. So, hopefully just listening to the way people came up with ideas, it gives you some ideas for your own Acumatica implementation. All right, so with that, we'll just go ahead and splice together each interview, and you'll hear from at least the teams that were there that I was able to interview. All right, so I'm here with Team 1. I guess we don't have Greek letters this year. Boo. Oh, Team Green. Okay, so a number and a color. And Diane's going to tell us what they're working on.
All right, so the theme this year is sustainability.
Okay.
So our project is to take a look at sales orders with the use case being that you've got multiple warehouses out there across the country and various inventory, and somebody places an order, and we're trying to reduce the carbon footprint, reduce the emissions, reduce the amount of travel that's necessary for this order. And that all sounds somewhat simple until you get into, well, if there's multiple lines on the order, and maybe I can ship part of it from one warehouse and part from another warehouse, or maybe I can ship it all together from one warehouse instead of two. So we're trying to optimize that. So even though you may have all of the inventory in one warehouse, that warehouse may be so far away from the customer that it's cheaper to send two packages from two other warehouses that are closer, cheaper in the emissions world than it is.
So you're not concerned about price of the actual shipping, just emissions.
Cost.
Okay.
Yeah,
so just mileage.
Mileage, and having these warehouses kind of all over the place in the country to calculate, the most efficient way to get it there.
And normally you drop something on a sales order and it just picks a warehouse. So that would happen, I assume. Then you've got a routine that kind of goes through and reassigns warehouses?
Basically, yes. So we would let you do the defaults by customer or whatever your normal way is in Acumatica. And then we have a new action button that says go green, i.e. optimize it. And then it gives you another set of information that tells you, well, you could do it this way. This is the optimized route, and it will have a new column on the sales order showing the good or the best warehouse to send it from. And then we're doing a calculation of your carbon emissions. The normal way would be X. The carbon emissions the new way with the optimized would be Y. And so you're saving X percentage or whatever the difference is between those two.
And how do you calculate the mileage? Do you go out to an API of some sort, or?
No, we're using something called a Haverstein formula and a geolocation, which we have all of the zip codes with all of their longitude, latitudes, and all that kind of stuff loaded in. We don't have to make an external API call.
I guess that's close enough. Zip code is close enough. It doesn't have to be like address. Yeah, okay.
Specific, house on that street. It's good enough to just get down to the zip code.
Yeah, because you're not going to have warehouses like, multiple in a zip code or anything like that.
City or anything like that. Yeah, okay. Exactly. Oh, cool. So that's how we're doing it. And then it also takes inventory, on hand into consideration at the different warehouses, because you have all these varieties, of combinations that could be out there with a different level of inventory.
So if I had a 10-line sales order and I have 10 warehouses, could it potentially say 10 separate shipments if that's what made sense?
It could, if that was what made sense. And obviously this is the hackathon, so we're not getting into every possible combination, but our idea is you could limit it to say, the max is 3. I don't ever want to try to take it more than 3 because that just gets a little crazy.
Sure.
Or a parameter of some kind where you could control that as the end user. And you can even not accept, if you don't want to accept the optimization, you can just let it go the old way.
Because it's a pop-up of some sort.
It's just on the sales order screen, yeah. That it's new fields on the screen in the grid.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. I got team number 2, and I don't think you have a team name yet. Is that right?
There is a name, but
still working on it, or still secret?
Somebody else was working on it. I wasn't involved in that part of it.
But Kyle here at least has an idea of what the solution is going to look like, or what you wanted it to look like.
Yes, that's correct. So we've essentially built a carbon accounting module in Acumatica. So the idea is that you have operations within the ERP. They generate carbon, so we have a couple different ways of calculating that. Like we have some integration with the manufacturing module, and then also with the shipments and transfers. And then what happens is that, though, I guess it's really based around the whole concept that you're seeing with carbon offsets, right? So you have this carbon generating activity, which then puts a liability on your books. So essentially,
So it's sort of like your own balance sheet account a little bit.
Yeah, and then you can then use the purchasing module to essentially purchase offsets to then reduce that liability.
Okay.
So
so you can hit the ledger from the other side when you purchase a certain type of an item?
Yeah, actually, you
like a non-stock item?
You started to drill down to it. So it is actually a stock
That's what I like doing. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. So it is a stock item. So what we do is we just allow negative quantity. So what happens is that we have we have sort of this like transaction screen, but then under the hood what's driving it is the receipt and entry inventory screens. So when you have a carbon emitting activity, that is an issue of the stock item, which then we leverage a lot of.
Which is just driving it like to a negative quantity on hand.
Exactly.
Okay, that's the liability part of it. Okay.
Quite literally, yeah. So we're leveraging a lot of the inventory module.
Okay.
And then same on the receipt side. Again, just removing that balance, but then having cash go out. But it also works in reverse, right? So if you have operations in the ERP, for example, that sink carbon, then you can then sell the excess, right? The inventory that is now positive in your warehouse.
I missed you there. Help me out there.
So essentially, if you are sinking carbon, that is a receipt transaction, which then generates an asset on your books. So you could then sell those offsets.
What is sinking carbon? I don't even know what that means.
Well, I mean, like for example, growing trees.
Okay.
Right? So take like any process that takes carbon out of the atmosphere and puts it into wherever, right? So there's many different ways of doing it, like planting trees.
So it's like, sort of like manufacturing a carbon offset instead of buying a carbon offset.
Yes,
kind of.
That's correct.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. It's the other side. Like so, there's folks that like pump carbon dioxide into the ground. Right?
Okay.
Or again, like having keeping a forest intact that takes carbon out of the atmosphere.
Okay.
That would be a situation where you have a carbon sink.
Okay.
And then that carbon sink then could hit your balance sheet as an asset that you could then turn into cash.
I like the idea of using the inventory module because you can hit that from so many different modules in Acumatica, and that allows you to hit it in either direction. That makes perfect sense.
Yep, exactly.
So like, where does your solution come in? Because I could create a stock item and hit it, from different. I could use that with native Acumatica. What does your thing add?
Yeah, the big thing is that it's how we've integrated it with different modules in Acumatica, right? So again, that I really only described sort of the core accounting piece of it, but then for example, when we've tied it into, for example, a work center, right? And I think you might have seen this in some of the other projects, but like a work center during a manufacturing step, like that could be something that triggers a carbon transaction. So it's more than just, again, we have built that sort of carbon transaction, the core accounting functionality, which again leverages a lot of the inventory module. But really what I think what's going to be interesting is how can we now take that, and again, it's more automated and it's definitely a drilled down screen, like, obviously an IN receipt and an IN receipt and an IN issue, like those are very broad. Like you'd have to know exactly what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. So we've actually built a screen that you'll see tomorrow that sort of distills the concept down to like, it uses a user experience it has a user experience that is a lot more like focused, if that makes sense.
Instead of, in terms of being a one-stop shop for what you turn on and what you turn off. Is that what you mean or no?
I mean to say that, like, for example, you type in like a consistent unit of carbon impact like on the screen. So you say like 1,000 tons of carbon equivalent. And then what we do is we sort of orchestrate the inventory transactions. Like instead of you have to pick the non-stock item, it's like there is like
so it's more user friendly.
Exactly.
But then it sounds like you also have hooks to create inventory transactions from places that normally don't.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, normally I can do a purchase receipt to get stuff into inventory, but you have other ways to create inventory transactions for that stock item.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So for example, this is like a new spot would be an inventory transfer. So imagine you have goods in warehouse A and then you want to transport them to warehouse B. Mm-hmm. So in the in the transfer screen, you would like press a button and it would say, okay, we're going to drive, a ton of goods 500 miles on a truck, right? And then what we're using the EPA calculations of carbon equivalent, which then creates this carbon transaction.
Gotcha. Whereas normally a transfer is sort of like a null effect on inventory because it's not really leaving your inventory, but you're creating an inventory transaction essentially for that carbon stock item off the transfer.
That's exactly correct. Okay. Yeah. So it's that additional impact, and again, it's really about like, okay, so it's more than just value going from warehouse A to warehouse B. It's value going from warehouse A to warehouse B plus this sort of carbon dioxide impact on the environment. And then again, if you're aiming to be a carbon neutral company, this is something that you need to track in all of your operations. And then also we have this nice integration into the financials so that you can then buy your offsets, and you could actually see your liability before you buy it. Like you know what I mean? Like it's like essentially it's on the balance sheet as soon as it happens.
Yeah, I like the way you described it. It's a ledger, it's a balance sheet, which doesn't go away until you take care of it, as opposed to like an income statement account. It kind of goes away next year, but the balance sheet just lives there forever until you do something about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to explain it to me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, come check it out tomorrow.
All right, this is team number 3, Team Fuzz, and Mike's going to tell us what they're working on.
So, what we're kind of working on.
Oh yeah, and by the way, tell us like what you wanted it to do. You might have run into some like challenges. To give us like the dream. Yeah.
So the dream was that we'd all be sitting on a beach somewhere, drinking Mai Tais. That did not happen, of course.
Scaled down version of the dream.
And we're kind of. So the product name is called AccuVolt.
Okay.
Okay. The concept is that what we're doing is we have set up customization that's going to track the carbon emissions based on electrical use in a manufacturing environment, basically. So what we've done is basically set up a process that sets standards for carbon emission on the raw materials. From there, we've also set up a process that sets standards on each of the manufacturing pieces, the machinery and toolery in the manufacturing. Okay, and then as products are produced, we use those carbon emissions based on kilowatt hours to calculate total carbon emissions for any production run.
So you're looking at raw material, overhead, tools. Is there any carbon emissions with labor? I guess not, right?
We're keeping it because of scope. We're keeping our scope very thin. Okay. A larger goal and something that we see as the second part of it when we have time, in a larger development environment, would be able to look at all the other factors that make up the carbon footprint of the company itself, which is your office, your warehouse, your forklifts, and that stuff. So that would be one side of it. We have this side of it, which is the manufacturing side.
So it's direct emissions, not indirect emissions,
right.
Basically.
Okay. Everything's based on direct emissions, and based on only the kilowatt hours. When we focused on electrical emissions, not on gas.
Basically. I like that you narrowed down. Yeah, that's good. You're not trying to be everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and what we found is there's tons of tools out there to take and give you standards and to provide calculations, but to provide those calculations, but you need to be able to gather the information to feed to those tools, and that's kind of what this process will do. Along with that, we're going to create a couple of GIs and dashboards to show kind of how much carbon emission is from this product, and from this product, and what the raw materials look like in terms of charting raw material carbon emission uses. Because at that point, you could look at it this way. I bought from this vendor, and I have these 5 products with high CO2 emissions, and guess what? I've decided to go to a different vendor who's producing lesser emissions from their products.
So tell me how you do that. If you're using this, would you be using the same item number, or you'd be using new item numbers at that point?
You could track it just like you do with standard costing, right? Because
So you're actually doing it at the transactional layer. You're not just storing this on the master stock item screen.
no, we're storing on the master stock items.
Okay. So you do a new item and you'd have a different value associated with that new
right.
item. Okay, interesting. And then tools, same thing too. You store it like at the tool setup screen level.
We start at the tools at the machine level.
So then you know like how many units were used of tools, machines, and raw materials, and then that's how you aggregate it with your GI.
Right.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
That's about it.
All right, this is Team 4 Sustainable Shippers, and Patrick's going to tell us what they're working on.
So we are building a customization that you can install in vanilla Acumatica probably that will allow you to give guidance to your personnel on how to most efficiently package your shipment. So when you pick and pack a shipment, the system doesn't give you guidance on how many items per box, what kind of packing materials and that sort of thing. So we've added the ability to set stock items that are packing materials of different levels of sustainability, and so that once we go to ship a package, we can say, hey, you set it up so that 5 Powerades should go in a medium box, and you should use such and such packing material for that item based on its fragility and the best level of sustainability that we can use for that one. So there's all sorts of different packing materials out there. Plastic bubbles obviously is a good packing material, but it's not very sustainable. So we rate the packing materials based on that. So you could get like a mushroom pack, and put that in, and that's a very good sustainability level and a certain fragility level. And so we're going to give you a guide. So you hit a button and we'll pack the shipment for you and create a file to kind of give you guidance on how to pack it efficiently.
So that means somehow you have to store the packing material and some kind of like sustainability rating on the packing material. So that's not even a concept right now, right?
Right.
It's just boxes. So how are you going to do that?
Right now, we're adding fields to the stock item screen so you can designate an item as packing material. So we'll just ease that into your inventory. And then we have a couple tables that you can enter in your levels of sustainability and fragility depending on your type of business, your type of inventory. And then you can mark items, either items or packing materials, depending on packing materials have a sustainability level. Items that you're packing have a fragility level to kind of give you an idea of how those things should match, what kind of packing materials you're going to need. And you can have a preferred packing material and the quantity of packing material for a particular item that you ship.
So on the shipment itself, does that mean that packing item will get added to the shipment or somehow it gets added to the box, or it doesn't actually get added to the shipment, it just gets used when determining what box to use, or I'm not
packaging
sure
material?
The packaging material.
Yeah. No, we don't put it on the shipment, but it is part of the guidance. So it'll. I think we're working on a report that will print out with the shipment when you push the button to let you know the recommended packing materials for the items.
Got it. So each item gets one recommended packing material, essentially.
If it's called for. You might set it that it doesn't need any packing material.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the item itself. That's where you're setting up.
Right.
Basically, the item gets linked to other items that are packing material.
Yeah, we call it the fragility level. So if you're sending a book, right, the fragility level is pretty low. You don't need a lot of packing material for that. But if you're sending a glass, a wine glass, that's a very high fragility level. So you're going to need your preferred packing material will probably be, plastic air bubble or something like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
My daughter likes Mr. Beast on YouTube, and he just came out with a new video today where he goes on to like all these different islands, super expensive islands, and on one of them you get to hit golf balls into the ocean, but they're made out of fish food somehow. So I thought that was interesting. There's a sustainable thing.
So their sustainability level will be high.
Well, cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Tim.
All right, this is Team 5 or Red 5, and Marco's going to tell us what they're working on.
So we're working on an implementation called Quality Insights, and it's an a customization module that allows companies to track incidents in their production or shipments or whatever their main business is, to enable them to reduce, any waste or any additional expenses, so they can track any like returns or incidents in the production line, measure the impact, plan what they need to do to resolve that, and then measure what the impact, the benefit of that is to the business and to the environment.
So when you say production, does that mean you're focused on manufacturing, or is like where does it plug in to Acumatica?
It plugs into basically any of the modules.
Oh.
So I said production as an example, but it could be distribution. It can be even CRM cases. So anywhere in the business that would generate a waste, either as a waste product or something that could be reused or should be reduced, if you are getting a lot of returns, or if you get bad products, or if you get any other issues you need to track, you can just plug the module into that part of your business process and generate incidents and track the impact, like the business impact, like costs and things like that, or the environmental impact, and have an action plan ready. So it basically plugs into any of the Acumatica modules and lets you track those incidents that generate cost or environmental impact.
So how about a use case? This one might be too hard, but you said cases, CRM cases.
Yeah.
You don't have to use that one. Or can you think of a specific actual business? I'm still trying to think of what's it measuring, and what's it like.
Pitching? Yeah.
Oh, we got another pitcher in here. Let's see, who's this? Sorry. Brandon. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So with quality insights, it's sort of like think of it like a non-conformance or an incident reporting module. So from the point of view of waste, process improvement, etc., you cannot implement change, you cannot look to reduce waste without defining and measuring it. Right? If you take a look at it from the point of Six Sigma, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. So an incident can be created from a variety of documents, such as in manufacturing, right? If you create a move and you had scrap, you might want to create an incident so that after the fact, you're not stopping production, but after the fact, someone will go document why did that scrap occur, right? You identify the problem. Once the problem is identified, you determine what was the root cause. Was it operator error? Were the instructions and documentation not clear? Could be a variety of issues. Once you've identified what the root cause was, you can then plan to take action, right? What are you going to do to remediate it? You're going to come up with a training plan. You're going to improve documentation. Once you've identified what the plan is, you can then look to implement the plan. You can assign owners and work groups of who's going to own those plans. Once that's done, you identify and determine what was the impact of everything, right? The impact could be timeline, revenue, cost, relationship even, right? There's a lot of things that can impact a business separate from the bottom line, and it could be reputation, brand recognition, things of that nature. And then at that point, it's basically closed. So the Quality Insights allows the users to actually start identifying a lot of the small issues that arise throughout the business, not just within production, but even within the CRM module or within the sales order module. From the CRM side, if a customer were to submit a claim and you utilize the native incoming processing, right? You get a case because some customer needs to return something, you utilize the latest functionality of the return order to create a return order, but now you want to track those costs because now the company is incurring costs of freight, of additional freight, of rework to reproduce and ship something back out. So it
sounds like a listener. It's like it's listening for some piece of data and then triggering some action for you to sort of follow a workflow on. Is that kind of a way of describing it?
Yeah, and relate all the documents to one central record. So with the incident, you can relate the case that came in on, the sales order can be related, the production order if you had to reproduce it, and the shipment. So all of these documents can be related to one central entity, right, being the relation, and the relation allows you to also track what are all the costs that were involved, right, and even allocate those towards the departments and what ownership those departments took in those costs.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Yep.
Is that because you have such a big team? Like, what made you so ambitious to take this on?
The challenge.
And is it transactional only, or can it be like when I hit a certain amount of returns or scrap or something, like I don't really care until I hit a certain threshold, or is it always transactional based, like on the individual transactions?
It can be tied to a source transaction, although you are able to merge multiple transactions into it. It's not restricted just on a one-to-one basis. It could be a many-to-many relationship.
And then is it sort of tracking, could I have a threshold where I don't care until 5 of these happen, or is it going to trigger it as soon as one of them happens?
We can build that out further. For example, on cases, having certain trigger points, or even without that, utilizing business events, and have a business event monitor and say, if a customer has a certain number of claims in a certain period of time, then it automatically creates an incident.
So then feed it to I like that. That would make it really flexible. Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like a listener. It could listen to actual transactions or something more aggregated fed by a business event.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the key is that you've got workflow associated with it. It's not just, hey, I'm showing you something on a dashboard. It's, hey, something then needs to trigger workflow. Is that a good way of describing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right, this is team number 7, which is Greta's. And Darren's going to tell us, first of all, what your team name means.
Yeah, well, I think Tony actually was the one that came up with it. It's sort of a combination of Greta Thunberg, butchering everything, who's a climate activist who I guess
gotcha.
is still pretty popular, known for her very vocal opinion on climate change, which is a very important thing, and it needs to be vocalized. So good on her. It also is a combination of EDA, which is the Greek
7th letter in the Greek alphabet.
I like that. Paying homage to hackathons past that used to be named according to Greek letters. Thank you, Mark Franks. And now apparently everything has been
back in ancient Greek.
No, I meant like a year ago. But now it's just numbers, I guess. But nice move for paying homage to that. And I got a comment, you all have the same team shirts on here, which is pretty cool.
You gotta look the part.
So tell me what you're working on, like what's your solution?
Yeah, I mean, we bounced back.
Oh yeah, by the way, it doesn't have to be like how it's going to actually turn out.
Yeah.
At this point in the night, you might be having doubts. Give me like, the grand vision if you had a week or two to execute it.
Okay. That's a very interesting question. So we set out with a bunch of different ideas. Our original plan when we came here was sort of a combination effort to minimize the amount of packages that are sent out through, e-commerce as an example. So we wanted to develop a way of consolidating packages, similar to the way that Amazon, you might see that it sort of gives you an option in the shipping to get it like a day later and reduce the amount of boxes that they put it in, and reduce the number of shipments that are going out. So that not only obviously affects the bottom line for the business itself, just in terms of shipping charges, but also reduces cardboard and other paper waste that ends up in landfill. So we set out to sort of develop that into a workable solution within Acumatica to allow Acumatica partners to begin using that feature and to sort of start the consolidation efforts for shipments that might be going out within a couple of days of each other for the same customer. We also integrated with a API that Tony also discovered and we vetted.
Well, hold on, before you get to the API, so it sounds like you must be looking at the sales order data if you're able to look out into the future. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah,
And
and it bases off of the shipment screen, processing shipments.
So the shipment data. Okay, so once it gets to the point of a shipment, and then you're consolidating though across potentially multiple orders.
Correct.
Not just looking at that one specific shipment. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, sorry.
So
API part, go ahead.
Yeah, and theoretically, how at least we envisioned in the beginning, it would allow for customers to elect to use this service. So they would be able to define their own sort of buffer days.
Just like Amazon, like I can pick to have the more sustainable option. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a completely elected process. If there's a customer out there that has historically needed their deliveries as soon as possible, they could define the buffer day basically, or the lead time for an order going out to 0 days, so that it would ship out immediately. Otherwise, the logic that we sort of wanted to emulate in code and work with Acumatica is to sort of introduce a lead time where a customer could say, hey, this isn't of utmost importance, it's something that I need for like 2 weeks from now, so you could, realistically wait to ship it out for 3-5 days, it doesn't matter. And then if they happen to place an order between that time frame, then we would be able to see it on a dashboard and combine that shipment and send it out in one.
This is Acumatica's lead time concept or your own lead time?
We didn't want to overwrite anybody's currently existing use of the lead time field, so we created just our own field that sort of mimics that.
And are you storing it at the line level, so like someone could have a shipment with 10 items on it and they select which items they could have a longer lead time, or where do you store it at?
At the current moment, it's set as a global shipment variable.
For the customer, for the specific customer.
Correct. So there's a field that exists on the customer card, but it could be overwritten for a particular order.
Okay, so
saying,
keep it simple.
I need this tomorrow, or I could wait to get it for a couple days.
Okay, so customer gets to elect, stored on the customer, and then there's an API somehow. What happens there?
Yeah, so we wanted to quantify that. Obviously, a big portion of all of these services is to help make a ROI make sense and to make it marketable towards your the customer's customer. So we partner, or I guess are utilizing an API through Climatic, CLIMATIQ, that has consolidated a bunch of resources and data that you can reasonably plug in to different locations, and it would be able to provide you the estimated path using trucks or using air or shipping containers or trains, and gives you back a carbon usage estimate in terms of kilograms of carbon that would be generated by picking that mode of transport.
So this is a separate thing. The first is like consolidating shipments. This is a totally separate thing, more to do with the ship via, it sounds like.
Yes.
The ship method, how it's going to get there.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. So we wanted to tie that in to make our consolidated shipment idea more, I guess, marketable, so that you would be able to show by reducing this much package waste or this much emissions by combining the shipment. You can reasonably be able to market that to customers and say you reduced X amount of kilograms of carbon by selecting to combine these packages.
That makes sense. So then is that also a customer selection that would be it's always going out on the train, or somehow they would get an intervene on a shipment by shipment basis when they could see how big the carbon impact would be for that particular shipment?
Yeah, so we, as of right now, we're integrating a sort of a shipment rate API endpoint that will be able to spit back out quotes for air and ground, and then using the location data, we plug it into the other API that assembles all of the estimates in terms of carbon emissions, so that they have sort of a third way of looking at the shipment other than price and delivery date.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so and that would probably happen on the order, not on the shipment. Because it's up front when you're taking the order from the customer.
Yeah, okay. That's correct.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Like normally they just look at dollars and how fast it's going to get there. You're just adding a third metric that you're going to show to them, and it's a third factor when they're considering which option to choose.
Yeah, and again, all this is reportable. So by selecting, obviously in the lion's share of portions or lion's share of orders, shipping things via ground is much more carbon efficient than flying it, obviously, just because planes tend to produce a lot more carbon emissions. So it could also be a reportable thing that we're working on some GIs for, to be able to produce a metric that, by choosing ground for these particular orders, we were able to save X amount of kilograms of carbon that otherwise would have been released into the atmosphere.
Well, cool. I'll let you get back to work and let you get as far into executing this as possible.
We're going to try.
All right, this is Team 8. It's Team Matroshka. And this is Joseph is going to tell us about what they're working on.
Yeah, so we're building a software that simplifies the challenges of requirements that the EU is requiring on ESG reports, which is environmental, social, and governance impacts.
I see you've got there was a SF. Go back to that second slide. You had a SF. Oh, no. Yeah, SFDR. What is that? I'm an American, so I have no idea what that is. Or maybe I should.
SFDR. Oh, I have it on one of these slides.
Oh, here, I'll read it right here. It's integrating ESG metrics into the financial practices. Okay, so it sounds like it's the financial side of ESG, maybe. Okay. So then your tool sounds like it's a financial tool then, somehow.
So it's a tool that helps companies gather information that the SFDR is requiring.
Got it.
Which is...
So this sounds practical. This is like a government compliance type of a tool, something you've got to do, and any type of government compliance, at least in my experience, is like just a pain in the neck. Clark's going to chime in here.
So ESG is where that you gather like information about all your customers and vendors and say this is where we land on the ESG scale, and then you provide that information to the EU's SFDR.
So is it just information about customers and vendors? It doesn't get down to transactional level.
It's information about what customers and vendors are doing about sustainability.
Okay. So like the data you have to store in Acumatica is just stored on like customer and vendor master records?
Yes.
Okay.
So like, for instance, like what's their diversity like? What's their, do they have like a sustainability program? That type of stuff.
So I could see like in Acumatica, I could just throw attributes on vendors and customers. Where does the code come in? Like where does your solution start to do stuff? Like does it put it into certain file format?
It makes it simple to gather the information.
Okay.
From the customer or the vendor.
Like with some kind of email workflow or something, or?
No, it's a custom page that he's using.
Ah, okay.
So it's a form that we send out to our vendors. They fill it out in a simple, user-friendly way, and then it presents dashboards and reports to us that we can submit, or to the customer, to our customer, that they can submit to the SFDR.
And then how do they log in? Like, are they logging into the customer portal in Acumatica with a Acumatica login, or how do they authenticate?
They're using like a custom web page that we're building.
Oh, okay.
And we're just using APIs to communicate that information into Acumatica.
Okay, I like it. So you don't have to authenticate. They don't have to, but when you click on the link, you know who they are because of the link they clicked on. That makes sense.
Exactly.
And then somehow you're pushing the data back into Acumatica with the APIs?
Mm-hmm.
Aha, I like that because
Because it's
The
got to be
Ac-
simple, otherwise you'll
Right.
never get the information.
Right. Okay. So it's got to be a web. You got to have a web server to run this thing somewhere. What kind of code are you writing in it? Like, or what kind of, is it a WordPress site, or what's your website?
We're using
Oh, we got a third person here. Hold on. We finally baited him in. Okay.
We're running a LAMP stack, Linux base.
Okay.
That's Apache, and we're using a PHP framework called Laravel.
Okay.
Just faster for me to code in.
So it's just you don't have like a full blown web content manager or anything like that. It's just simple pages.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing, guys. Appreciate it. All right, this is Team 9. The name of the project is Acucycle, and sorry, tell me your name again.
Evan Templin.
Evan is going to tell us about it. Go ahead.
We're making a recycling module for Acumatica.
Okay.
Basically, the idea is,
Oh, I see the screen. You have a recycle entry screen up on your computer. Okay.
Yep. So the idea is, you get an RMA from a customer. They send you something that's busted. You'll send them a working one. But now you have this extra product. There's no built-in native functionality in Acumatica without, making something up using like a sales order or something to handle that. So we're building in a module to handle taking that part, and whether you're refurbishing it, you're going to break it down and sell it to a recycling vendor or a customer, depending on if you have to pay them or not. But anyway, you gotta, so like if you, basic idea, you take metal pieces from a electronical device that you can then sell off to someone willing to purchase it. And Stan over here is in the business of cleaning out
Okay.
So he constantly is recycling water or leftover slurry.
Water that you wouldn't drink. Slurry. Okay. Something that used to be water.
Yeah.
So, all right, normally when an RMA comes back in, someone puts it in like a bin location that, you can't sell out of. Is this kind of building on that concept, or like tell me transactionally how it would flow through the system?
Exactly. So we're going to take that that specific. So we're actually going to set it up so there's a warehouse that you would move it into. So a recycling/RMA warehouse, and then inside there we're going to have like a wizard where you would pick your different parts that you have in there to then create your entry. And then in there, you're going to define how you're going to handle that item depending on different setups. But
so it sounds like a glorified scrap entry. Like this is actually recording that I scrapped it, as opposed to me just adjusting it out of inventory.
Exactly, yeah. And then it's going to help you build the documents that you need to move it in and out of inventory, sell it to a customer, or buy it from a vendor. 'Cause sometimes, you have to pay someone to take your trash. Sometimes someone will pay you to take your trash. It all depends on what it is. So this is kind of trying to take all those pieces and put it together and help you be more conscious. And then also, goal is to put some dashboards together, from upper management, feel better that you're recycling and saving the world. So.
Oh, hold on. Okay, so, coming around here for some additional info.
Our awesome feature is bin capacity against the warehouse location. So we're gonna have a dashboard that says this stuff that's in waste that we need to recycle or do something with is getting to 80% capacity of your bin. We better do something about it.
So like it could be a shipping container out in the back, and when you're measuring how full it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's bin capacity as part of the making sure we don't hidden feature.
Yeah, which could be applicable to things other than recycling, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we think that could be the inside track to get into the product next year.
Oh, I like that.
So
bin capacity.
Bin
okay.
capacity.
Cool. Wait, and then what about, this sounds kind of like a kit entry to get it out of inventory. Like you can aggregate additional costs on it, like non-stock items do?
Yeah, we're going to do a disassembly kit. We already have that built.
Okay. Cool.
So it's all ready to go.
So the documentation is like a big part of it, because you can produce stuff needed for a recycling agency or something like that.
Right.
Right, cool. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We're very great.
All right, Team 10, and again, I will lament the fact that there are no Greek letters this year. This has been reduced to a game of numbers. But here's Brian to describe what Team 10 is working on.
Team 10 is very creative, so we actually took the team name Team 10. If you can't figure out how we get there, we got problems. So from that, what we decided we were going to do this year is we're going to take a look at capturing what our our carbon footprint is. And so we decided that we would first of all take a look at a national database outside of Acumatica to see what the values are for those emissions. So we have some things we have to send in to say, here's my parameters, give me values back of how expensive that is in our carbon footprint. And so what we want to do is we're actually going to put those codes against items so we can classify if you're going to buy a propane tank or refill a propane tank for your fork truck, how much is it actually costing you in a carbon footprint to operate that? And we're capturing that at the AP bills and adjustments screen so that we can actually see as you process those for payment, you clearly have bought them, you're going to consume them, so that's where we're going to capture it. And record how much you have acquired versus what the cost of that carbon footprint is, and be able to get a running total of what that footprint looks like from a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and then give you the opportunity to act on that. So if your means of offsetting that carbon footprint is to go buy carbon offset credits, or to actually go plant your own rainforest, or if you want to support a foundation whose goal is to support a rainforest to make sure that we don't deforest the parts of our world that actually offset all of these emissions that we're generating, then it's up to you how to do that. We're going to give you that number of what your emissions footprint is so that you can make an informed decision of how you want to offset that.
So the database that you grabbed, is that like a database of items and how much carbon those types of items generate, and thus becomes like a field that you store on the stock item screen, or how's that work?
I wish it was that easy. Actually,
is it that easy conceptually, and it's just hard to execute, or?
Well, conceptually, it's pretty straightforward. We are storing a code, so what we're going to do is make it easy for the end user. Nobody wants to ask a typical clerk that's putting data in the system to go figure out exactly how to type those 5 fields in, right? So we have to go look up the database on these things that are just so easy as I can't even remember what some of them are.
But that's the database is a list of items like propane X, propane Y, right? That kind of thing.
We're going to make it easy. It's propane.
Okay.
But when you go look it up in the national database, they have like the card catalog in the library. If anybody remembers how to use that, you got to know how it works.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So if you don't know how that stuff works, we don't want to have a clerk do it. So we're going to make it easy.
Okay.
So if we want to have propane as an item, we're going to set up propane for the end user and let a sysadmin take care of the hard work.
Okay.
And so then our folks that are working the API calls, they're going to use those values to go make that call back to the national database, and then get the values back that our next part of our team is actually going to tie into the AP bills and adjustment screen to do all the math to say, here's
so
what
you're going to actually store the value you got back from the API on the individual AP transaction.
We're going to store the result of that, yeah. So the way we're actually going to do that, those values are not updated every day. They're not updated every hour. I mean, some of the records I think said 2023.
Why would a propane value change? I mean,
right.
But you're going to capture it anyways. That's why, just in case it changes, you've got it.
We're going to capture whatever the national database says that it is and use that value. So the value might be old because there really has been no change to the math behind it.
Sure.
But when they say, we didn't quite have that right, let's adjust that, then the database that we're going to query will tell us how old that data is in terms of what year it was populated. Okay. So we're going to pull that data back. We're going to apply that against our AP bills and adjustment screen to know, based on how much volumes you said that you purchased, how does that relate to the number? And don't get me wrong, we're not doing rocket science math here because we're doing this in a 12-hour period.
It sounds like multiplication.
well,
multiply quantity times carbon units, right?
So you're going to refill one propane tank for your fork truck, but then you're going to apply that unit of measure against whatever the national database has. They're probably talking in metric tons of CO2.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
so we're not doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. So no rocket science level math.
Still, it's a good concept.
So yes,
I like that you're doing it at the ledger level. That's kind of unique from what I've heard.
You love financials.
I don't like financials, but I know what they are.
You just posted about financials things a lot. I think that was the first stuff that I saw your name on when I heard about Tim Rodman years ago.
I am a recovering accountant, former CPA, so yeah, I do CPA and active. That's correct. Yeah, if I don't say it that way, then I get in trouble. Yes, that's the correct way to say it. So this has a financial impact, right? Because of ESG, et cetera, et cetera.
Because at the end of the day, the goal is that you're going to write a check to pay for some means of offsetting that carbon footprint that you've created. So it absolutely has an additional financial impact. but it also gives us the social responsibility to protect our planet, either directly or indirectly. A way of being able to try to measure what that impact is that we are having, and to make an informed decision how to adequately offset what we're doing. Now, along with that, our team actually, so we can make sure it was on record before we showed up here, in case someone stole the idea, we actually did make a donation as a team to a rainforest. I forget the exact name of it off the top of my head now, but a rainforest foundation. Actually, I think it might be Rainforest Foundation US, who what they do is, they're not out there growing new rainforests, but they're protecting the culture and helping people there to protect the environment there. So you don't have people go deforest because I can make money if I cut down the tree and sell it. They're working on protecting that rainforest.
So when you made a donation, was it in the name of Team 10? Or
it was in the name of Team 10.
Nice, well done.
And I have the PayPal transaction ID just if we need that.
Nice.
But yeah, so one of the sustainability goals was to make an immediate impact. And I thought, how more immediate can it be than to make a donation right up front as soon as we're ready to start on this thing, so that we're putting our own money into supporting a cause in an effort to offset. For instance, we have a few computers here. Hopefully over the course of a 12-hour development cycle, we won't use too much energy for that and create too big a carbon footprint. But
you're essentially trying to buy your name onto the hackathon trophy, whatever it takes. I'm fully for the.
My name's already on there. I'm good with that. So, but some of my other teammates, they deserve their name up there. But no, we wanted to make sure that even if we failed to qualify on any of the other opportunities, which we are trying to make sure we obviously hit, that we check the box of we're making an immediate impact. And then we're also working on trying to help business to be able to offset that carbon footprint that they create.
Well, I know I interrupted a trouble debugging crusade that you're on, so I'll let you get back to it. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, I tell you, the trouble was it only took me 2 hours to figure out that I forgot to rename a database table that I told someone that I would rename, and then I forgot to rename it. So.
At least you measured it. It was only in hours, not in days. I mean, I've heard that story, but it's impact of days.
So the carbon footprint that was created by the team until then was about a quarter of a megaton, and at the end of that effort was about three megatons.
The smoke that came out of your ears when you were banging your head against the table.
That's it.
Well, I'm glad you figured it out, and good luck to executing it.
Well, thanks for letting us share what our project is, and for those that are able to come tomorrow to listen to it, if you happen to have this out early, that'd be great. But I hope everyone gets the opportunity to enjoy as much of the summit as they can, and a little bit of Vegas. Let's not do it the other way around. But if you don't make it this year, make sure that next year you sign up for the hackathon. We want people that are technical, people that are non-technical. If we don't have a good sales presentation to sell this project, it doesn't matter how good the project is. And technical people, whilst they can be talented in selling, that's not their forte. So if we've got somebody really good at selling a project on our team, then we have a lot better shot of getting our point across, which means we have a lot better shot of taking that prize home. So if you don't feel like you should participate because I work in sales, or I work as the CEO or the CFO, that doesn't mean that you don't need to be here. It means that we need you more than anything, because when we walked in the room, we had 4 developers and 2 sysadmins and no business people. And fortunately, we had some business people walk in that didn't have a team, and we were fortunate enough to snag them. So we are hoping that is a great endeavor to help with the sales, but we will see how that works out tomorrow.
Well, good way of putting it, and I can sense the spirit of Mark Franks in that explanation there.
Yes, and I will tell you, Mark Franks is a dear friend of mine in the program for obvious reasons of all the support and mentoring that he gave me through the years, and he is definitely missed.
All right, this is Team 11, or 110% sustainable, and Ralph's going to tell us what they're working on.
So we're working on a sustainability project, which is common amongst the teams. We're going to be using back-end technology, which is highly dynamic, to basically track energy usage and CO2 emissions based on the EPA's calculator. What this is going to allow us to do is create dashboards and GIs to do C-level suite decision making. So you have a company, you have a board of directors or your executives, and they need to make decisions about the direction of the company. We're going to be creating data sets for them using the back-end technology, which is dynamic, to provide the information they need to understand things such as how many of our vendors are carbon neutral, how much of the products that we purchase from our vendors are carbon neutral versus not carbon neutral, how many of our how much of our labor is generating CO2 emissions versus not generating CO2 emissions, and then how can upgrading our fleet from gas to electric help. We have a real-world case scenario from one of our other VARs where a company running gas cars for its service members was actually making more trips than they wanted because the carrying capacity was too low. By upgrading to a electric car and increasing the carrying capacity, they not only saved on trips, they were more sustainable, less employee hours, less CO2 emissions, and better financially for the company. As an example of the data and the direction we're hoping that the C-suite executives that look at it will go.
So you said dynamic, and then some other things you said make me. Does this really sit in the workflow of the ERP system, or is it more just something that can look into the data and it's more kind of sitting outside of the workflow of the ERP system?
To answer that question, I'm going to pull over to my dev over here. Does our back-end technology sit in the workflow of the ERP system?
Well, I mean, just conceptually, like is this something that would be part of, when you're processing a transaction in Acumatica, or just more something that after the fact would look at the data that's in Acumatica to pull it?
The capture process happens as you are releasing documents, doing the processing, and then clearly the analysis happens afterwards. But it's captured real time.
But it's essentially like a data collection brain that's capturing, because like when you said dynamic, you could point it at anything in Acumatica to look at whatever you want.
Everything in Acumatica, the dynamic function of it is what additional fields in the table we want to add.
Okay.
So if you want to explain the green table.
Like an attribute or something like that. Okay.
Basically, yeah. So the idea is that you would, a particular company might be doing manufacturing, and so we would say these kinds of transactions we want to capture and later analyze. But a different company might be we're a professional services company or services company, and we don't have any manufacturing, but we have these other tables and types of transactions that we process, and we don't want to have different flavors of this solution, one for manufacturing, one for professional services. It's more of sort of an underlying engine to collect the transactions that are relevant to your company, so that later you can then analyze.
So give me a use case, like give me one specific scenario and how it flowed through your solution.
Or you can.
I'll give you a minute to make one up.
No, I let me go grab my note if you would.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been a while, and I actually used the bar. So.
Okay, this is you've got quite a little diagram here. Go ahead, walk us through.
Okay, so what you can't see is a manufacturing dashboard diagram. So at the header of our dashboard, we have an agnostic information that any company would want. Labor hours that generate CO2, energy usage for the company, the cost of that energy usage, and the CO2 emissions of that energy usage. So any company that wants to look at sustainability has at least one employee. That employee generates CO2. They have power they use. That generates CO2, and they've got to pay for it. Generates cost. So that's our agnostic, any company. In this manufacturing example, we have, using our back-end technology, gone through the AP transactions and identified is green yes, is green no, is green exempt. And we've applied it to our vendors. So is a vendor, such as a paper company providing our printer paper, committed to being carbon neutral? So some manufacturers for paper will say they'll plant trees to offset the paper that they're selling you. So the paper they're selling you is carbon neutral. The vendor is green. Is the vendor not green? Is whatever they're selling you not, is the vendor not made any carbon neutrality commitments, then they're not green. And then in addition, let's say, once again, the paper company, they're selling you paper and an ink cartridge. Well, they've done carbon neutrality for the paper, but they're not doing it for the ink. So our final example is the amount of product we are purchasing from our vendors, how much of that product is carbon neutral versus not carbon neutral, and how can we increase that percentage over time. So you have your green vendors, your not green vendors, and your total amount of purchases from either one, which is green or not green, and how you can improve it. And finally, I earlier mentioned...
Wait, so I got to back up. So it sounds like you're storing this information both on the vendor master and on the stock item master. Is that right?
So maybe we need to adjust this.
We're referring to, we're using AP transactions. So what we're doing is we're identifying whether something is green or not. So we are, in our dynamic system, we've decided to tag vendors as green or not green. But we can also apply this to things like equipment.
Okay, so yeah, let's stick with the vendor. So like being so dynamic, to me the challenge would be how do you store the info? Like what screen do you go to? Do you go to a screen in Acumatica, or like where do you make that decision?
Right, it would all be in dashboards. Unless I'm completely misunderstanding the question, at which point I'll grab the developer behind me.
No. So stick with this one. All right. So the vendor, you have to decide either the vendor is green or they're not, right? And then how do you flag that in the system?
We have a set of rules, but there's two tiers to this. Is a vendor green? Do they provide a green product? And then if a vendor is green, they provide at least one green product. Are there other products not green?
But you stay at the vendor level. So if the vendor is green, do you store it in an attribute? Do you store it? Where do you store that? Like, how do you tell Acumatica that this particular vendor is green? Where does that get stored?
So we're creating a table where it's being stored. The exact spot on where the vendor is stored.
Hey, give me the user interface. How do I do it in the user?
It's going to be a little bit sexier than that.
Okay.
And you'll appreciate this. So the rule as to whether...
As soon as he said that, I think there must be artificial intelligence involved. No, I hope not. Please, no artificial.
There is no chat GPT in this product.
No, that's right. Waiting to process your transactions live. No, so the idea will be is that you will have, for a particular transaction type, you're going to have a rule set. And where you're going to build that rule set is in a GI. And so what's going to happen is your transaction will run, our code will catch it, we'll say, this is an AP bill, run the rule for AP bills, the specific GI, and if it returns the positive result, then it is carbon. There's a carbon price. If not, it's carbon free. And so what that allows you to do, so going back to your question, how do I know that a vendor
time? Yeah.
Right. So now what I can do is I can do an attribute or a vendor group.
You could do it however you want. So you're not dealing with the UI part of it. I'd store it wherever I want. The GI is where you pick it up.
That is correct. Okay. That's correct. So you can build a complicated set of rules on however you need to come to the conclusion that you have to pay for carbon for this transaction or you do not.
Gotcha. Because that's the dynamic part of it.
That's the sexy part of it. It's behind a screen of code.
And it just works automatically. Yeah, someone's got to configure it this way, right? Yeah.
There's always the initial setup for any, this is at its heart a consulting exercise. But once you set up the measurements with all that, then it just runs.
And so then where does it go? Like, anyone could create a GI to collect data off of whatever fields they want. What your solution then is somehow, tell me the value add, like where does the data go? Tell me that.
So the data, the value add that we're aiming for is the executive, C-suite, owner level decision making. That's where sustainability decisions are made by companies. And so the value add is that we're able to create very powerful dashboards that show compelling and simple information to executives to make decisions such as adjusting what vendors they're going with, increasing or decreasing the amount of products that they're buying that are green, justifying switching from gas cars to electric cars, and monitoring your employee hours that generate CO2 and going, okay, well, we're going to expand the company next year by 20%. Employees, we're expecting to go up 20% hours. If we don't do anything to the efficiency of the company, we're going to be using X more energy, it's going to cost us more, and our CO2 footprint's going to be higher. if we're a company that cares about sustainability, hypothetically we are, if we have a sustainability dashboard, we can now use these metrics to make decisions going into the future, downsizing, growing, or shifting our focuses and investments.
So I get the value add, then what about the code add? Like, what does your code do? Because I feel like I could do this with generic inquiries and dashboards. Like, what does your code do, I guess? Does that make sense?
Well, so in determining on, correct. At its heart, it's a reporting exercise. But yeah.
How does your code make it easier? Yeah.
So over time, you're aggregating a lot of this data. So rather than regenerating each time, your reporting is always coming off of a ledger table. So because you could be pulling transactions from accounts payable, from purchasing, from manufacturing, a single GI is going to be tasked with a lot. So you'll have an unwieldy query that you're asking for.
Well, yeah, it'd be messy to do in a GI. I'm not disagreeing there, but like
inefficient and a waste of energy.
Yeah. So, but give me like where do I go? Like, where do I see your product? And is it essentially a way to create a data warehouse off of multiple GIs?
Essentially, that's what it's doing. Is you are creating a data warehouse. So each of these transactions, as they're captured, you have a subset of that data is put into our ledger. And from there, you can then generate your reporting. And then one last little ribbon on the package, if you will, is we have a screen where you can then see the transactions that you owe some sort of carbon cost for. And you can select your favorite vendor as a company that plants trees or that does carbon offset work, and you can generate an AP transaction, AP invoice, and essentially send them the money that is your carbon footprint.
So the elegance of the solution is we are data warehousing the information.
Yeah. So I just left. I get the whole ESG part of it, the sustainability. All right. I'm a reporting guy though. So yeah, this sounds to me like it's a data warehouse solution. It's like, talk to me from technical angle here. Like, is it a way? Can I schedule this to collect data once a day? Like, can it run on a scheduler, or does it just?
It happens as the transactions are collected.
Well, that's right. You said when it releases. So this somehow you're actually sniffing all of the screens but you're looking at GIs, so I'm still. It sounds kind of like a business event.
Kind of, yeah. And so what happens is, as the transaction's posted, it slips through into our code, and the first thing it says is this a transaction we have been asked to track? So we do a quick lookup on a small table that says, is this one of the 15 tables that we've been tasked?
So that's when it's using the GI to look up if it should store it. It's actually looking at all released transactions, not using a GI.
Yeah, so as the transaction comes through the routine, if it's a manufacturing transaction that we have elected to do it, then we look against the GI to say, do we have to pay for this or not? And that's when it goes into our table. So there's tons of transactions like just straight GL journal entries we don't care about. It just slides on past that code.
And then I like how you described it as a ledger. It sounds like you're deciding what posts into your sustainability ledger. It's like another submodule.
That's exactly correct, so that later you have the analysis, so you can look at a subset of that. What are our employee-related environmental costs? What are our machine costs? What are our vendor costs? Both inbound and outbound shipping, those sorts of things.
And also we directly link it to the source data, so we're able to integrate it with all the other data that Acumatica is already collecting for us. So it's not separate, it's completely one-to-one. You don't have to silo it off to the side.
Well, yeah, when I go to do my dashboard, I could join up to whatever I want to get that additional info. That's kind of what you mean, right? Oh, cool. All right. Took me a while to get it, but I think that's the nature of any dynamic. The hard point is selling it, right? The dynamic part is very powerful, but then coming up with the use case that makes it paint a picture in my head is always a challenge. So it just took me a little while to get there.
You forgot the cherry on top. So the idea is to use the technology to create dashboards for C-level suite executives, but we also have a fail-safe. If the executives want a sustainability dashboard, but they don't want to actually do anything to change their company,
Sounds like a Dilbert cartoon.
Oh, no, but we have the Make It Easy button, where if you don't want to make sustainability improvements for your company, you can donate to the charity of your choice to offset your carbon emissions, and it calculates that for them. So for the executive that wants to make the change or the executive that says they tried, we have the answer for you.
That sounds like exactly how Acumatica makes Acumatica Summit carbon neutral. They just go buy a bunch of carbon offsets for all the flights that people take to get here. That's cool. Well, nice, easy button. Nice way to round it off. I like it. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're the reclaimers.
All right, we got Team 12 here. They're the reclaimers, and Robert's going to tell us what they're working on.
Okay, so what we're working on is giving used inventory or just general stuff that's hanging out in inventory that's not really doing anything.
Hanging out in inventory, I like that.
Yeah, just that stuff that like probably everybody has this stuff in their garage where it's just sitting up in a box somewhere and
eBay potential maybe.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly where we're going with that. So what we ultimately want to do is have a mechanism that's going to allow you to capture what this inventory is. You don't necessarily know what it is, and a big part of it is taking digital imagery of the inventory itself.
Yes.
So and having that as part of the capture process. So we want to be able to take like generic barcodes like this, do a scan so that we can move this stuff around in an inventory and whatnot, and associate digital imagery with it. Because we're thinking at this point, we don't necessarily have subject matter experts at the receiving dock or inventory departments that do this, and we want to capture the digital imagery to help subject matter experts that are maybe in another remote area to help identify that part. So
digital imagery just means I pull out a phone and take a picture of what this thing is, or is it more than that?
That's exactly where we're going with.
Okay.
So like your main tool in terms of capturing all of this stuff is your mobile device. Use the camera to capture the barcode that establishes what we like a pseudo inventory record.
Acumatica mobile app?
Yeah.
Oh, and okay, you've got you can't see this, but you've got barcodes in front of you here, so I can just scan and then take a picture. Like you're working on the workflow of how it works
of this, right? So you scan.
This has been a challenge that I've run into before, because it's like, okay, I know I could take a picture and store it on the stock item. Acumatica has the capability, but the workflow to actually do that is messy, because I take my phone, I take a picture, it's got some meaningless file number, and then I got to go drag it on the stock item screen. Sounds like that's the problem you're solving.
That's what we're looking to solve with this project here at this point, and it is indeed challenging. And
well, I know that working with the Acumatica mobile app sometimes can be more challenging than you want it to be. So the simple idea, though, would be scan the barcode, your camera automatically comes up, and you take the picture. That's kind of what you're going for.
That's exactly where we want to go with this. Like, we wish we got it to that level where we are hitting some challenges at this point, but that's essentially the workflow that we were aiming for. Is scan something, your mobile phone immediately opens up, take a couple digital imageries, and just do this repetitively through whatever it is that you're collecting in inventory. Not necessarily like you can't have the subject matter expert there to do that, and then so you're collecting all of this information and digital imagery, and then you can now delegate to a subject matter expert to help you identify it. So we're kind of thinking of that pseudo inventory level where it's not quite an inventory record yet because you don't know what it is, but this is going to be a process that kind of helps you organize what that stuff is. And then at the end of the day, too, we want to be able to find that stuff. Everybody has that a box that's up in their garage with all sorts of stuff, and you might be able to use it, but if you can't find it, you're not going to use it. So part of it is a search mechanism, search engine that displays a catalog of images instead of just text, and then you just swipe through the catalog of images.
And somehow I can see the quantity on hand next to those images, maybe.
And the general information that you're capturing along with it. One of the most important things is where it is.
Well, to me, there'd be two important things: where it is, but to me, more importantly, is the sort on it. You would sort by like last transaction date or something, because I want the slow movers, or I want the stuff with low quantity on hand that hasn't sold in a while. It'd be the sort, right? I want the important stuff on the top.
Well, that type of stuff, that's in your inventory system at this point. Like what we're thinking about is like, okay, so one of the big use cases is perhaps a industry where you're refurbishing machinery. So I've worked, when I started out my ERP career, I worked for a company that did industrial machinery. Very often we would sell a brand new machine and we would purchase their old machinery, pull it all apart and bring it back into our inventory, and we would refurbish that machinery as new. So a big part of the industry was used parts. And selling used parts, think like scrap yards or places that will sell you used car parts and those sorts of things. There's just recesses of those inventory departments that just have stuff that is unidentified, and you can't necessarily get the subject matter experts in there to identify that because they're off in other areas. So we want to collect the information via digital imagery and bring that digital imagery to the subject matter experts to help organize what that second life is going to be for that inventory. And then at that point we have several different options that we're going to do at the final stage, which is to do something, and the action item for each of those inventory items. We're either going to have a mechanism to donate it and a classification and an action item to donate it. We also want to have interface directly to eBay. You mentioned eBay before, where you click a button and then poof, there's a eBay.
That'd be pretty cool. With the images, it's already got the images. That's the key. That's the hard part.
That's the image. Like that's the whole key to the whole thing is digital imagery and having that. Click a button. There's an ad now to help you sell that inventory at the end of the day. And then there's also now the subject matter experts done their job. They've identified the actual inventory item IDs in the system, and then there's the aspect of moving that inventory to its place in inventory where it will now then be sold and liquidated through just normal business process.
Cool. Well, I get that you have to have the sustainability tie-in because that's the point of the whole hackathon thing, but if you do nothing else but get that one mobile app screen that allows you to scan a barcode and it pulls up your camera automatically, that workflow right there, and you put that in a separate GitHub, this is a wish of mine, if you could put that in a separate GitHub package and put it somewhere on GitHub, I would love to have that. That'd be awesome.
That's exactly what we were aiming for. We didn't quite get there. We were talking about doing this with HTML5 up front, but
Was it a limitation with the mobile framework itself? You can be honest here.
my teammates are laughing here. We're banging our heads at this point.
So it could be a knowledge gap. It could be that you're not sure how to use it yet. You're not sure.
We'll be happy if we at least have something to show for this at the end of the day.
Well,
let's put it that
it's 10:30 at night. I'll let you get back to work. Thanks for sharing.
But that's exactly what we're after, is like an easy process of scan the barcode, immediately open up, and we were thinking at first,
good luck, I'm hoping,
probably needing to go HTML5 because
outside
like
the
you, I understand. Outside the framework. Through we were actually thinking about serving it through a webhook, which can return HTML at that point, and
just
talk
to the APIs at that point,
and then talk to the APIs through that, and then the process. So that would be the collection process, and then in terms of the organization, it would be all stock Acumatica that would.
If you could just do like some app in the App Store that has the name Acumatica in it, so I could search the App Store for Acumatica, Acumatica image capture. To me, that would be awesome. It might be too late to do that, but that would be maybe for next year. That'd be really cool.
That's exactly
Talk
what
to the APIs and have a native app so that you could totally control the workflow on it. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So that's what we were aiming for. I mean, we're not quite there, but that is the dream at this point.
Well, good luck.
All right, have a good one.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of ogforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.